Anime. There's so much to love about it. We can love the fights, the character developments, the loss, the love. Really, when you sit down to watch an episode of anime, there's a million different things you can love about what you're watching. But just like with so many other things, if there's a bunch of things you can love, there's more than definitely at least a couple of things you don't love. And anime is no exception to this rule. While truly great anime have some of the highest highs in any form of media, those same truly great anime also have some pretty considerable lows. And unfortunately, Naruto is no exception to this rule. So even though Naruto's character development and battles and sometimes world building are unmatched, unfortunately, if your manga or anime runs long enough, you're gonna run into some retcons and some plot holes and more than a few ass pulls. And while these plot holes aren't incredible, they don't destroy the story, but they can't be ignored. And actually, a big part of this page is addressing these plot holes and trying to find theories that fill them. But today, instead of looking for ways to fill these plot holes, I'd simply like to point them out, to make you aware of what I believe are some of the worst plot holes or retcons in Naruto's history. Because today, we're talking Naruto's top 15 worst plot holes. Now, I could sit down and rank each and every single one of these plot holes in terms of severity and how badly they affected the story, but honestly, that's incredibly subjective. Every plot hole that I'm listing in this list, I've addressed at some point or another, and I've made entire theory videos trying to fix these plot holes. So to rank the severity of these plot holes when I dedicate a large amount of my page to trying to fill these plot holes with possible canon answers is a somewhat arduous and incredibly subjective task. So I'm just gonna tell you the 15 plot holes, and you can tell me at the end which one is the worst. But before I tell you guys anything, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell. And if you guys like the idea of me ripping anime apart, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. And if you love the idea of me talking about anime, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, plot holes. Some people believe they're inexcusable holes in the story that destroy the reader's ability to get immersed, while others believe they're an opportunity for the reader to try and fill in the gaps with the information and the knowledge that they've acquired from this universe. Wherever you fall in terms of how you feel about plot holes, however, it's undeniable that they're a part of anime as we know it. While some shows like Hunter x Hunter and One Piece are substantially better at avoiding plot holes than shows like our beloved Naruto, no show is truly 100% plot hole proof. And Naruto's barely 80% plot hole proof. But what are these horrid plot holes that I'm talking about that I try to address through the medium of theories? Well, some span from differences in how power systems are explained to how they work, while others just seem like common sense things that a character could have done to save the world, with possibly the most egregious ones being the retcons between Naruto and Boruto that rewrite how the world was created. Today, we're going to be covering all of those and what they mean to the Naruto story and how they can possibly be explained away. But since this is an incredibly subjective topic and not just explaining who's the strongest, I'm just gonna start wherever I want. So the first plot hole that we're going to talk about revolves around Itachi, one of my favorite characters in the universe. See, Itachi is known as one of the most powerful people in Naruto, and he could have been even more powerful if he wasn't crippled by an unknown chakra disease. And while the chakra disease itself is not a plot hole, that was just Kishimoto getting Itachi out of the picture because he was possibly too powerful for the story, Itachi never really doing anything to cure his chakra illness is a plot hole. See, like I've already stated, the reason that Itachi was given this chakra illness is because his abilities were kind of broken. This is the same thing that happened to Kimimaro in the early days of Shippuden. This is why Madara was wiped out by Black Zetsu. Kishimoto has a habit of introducing characters too strong for the main characters to defeat, and therefore having to find another way to take them out. But I know what you're saying.
Nick, didn't you just do a video about how Itachi was taking preventative measures to help himself with his chakra disease?
Yes, I did, and Itachi was taking preventative measures to extend his life. We know from Sasuke Jin Raiden that Itachi was using eye drops from a certain village in order to extend his life, as the eye drops were a medicinal ninja drug that allowed him to continue living until Sasuke could finally kill him. And while that's fine, my real issue with Itachi's illness is the fact that Itachi knows about izanagi and izanami. We know this because when Itachi is brought back through the means of Edo Tensei, he uses izanami on Kabuto to place him in an infinite genjutsu. Infinite until Kabuto realizes that he can't change the world. And it's not like Itachi gains the knowledge of izanagi and izanami in the Pure Lands. He always knew. But we then proceeded to see Danzo use it about 17 times in his battle against Sasuke, fixing any kind of ailment that Sasuke inflicted upon him through the means of Susanoo arrows or Amaterasu, and Izanagi allows you to do that. Izanagi gives you complete and total reality warping. You are able to recreate your body in a different space using your creativity and giving your creativity form through the means of chakra, which therefore allows you to heal any ailment inflicted upon your body. However, it is implied in the Naruto manga that the powers of Izanagi actually allow you to reality warp things outside of your body, meaning for a minute or so you have complete and utter reality warping abilities. However, most Uchihas would simply use them to unwrite their deaths, like how Madara was able to program his eye with Izanagi to bring him back to life after his battle against Hashirama. I mean, Izanagi as a whole is a plot hole, as if you have complete and total reality warping abilities and you can create whatever you want, why wouldn't you just give yourself more Sharingan? Nothing about the rules of Izanagi says that you're restricted to making your own body. In fact, Izanagi is openly compared to the Sage of Six Paths creation of all things jutsu, which allowed him to take the 10 tails and form it into 9-tailed beasts, things that didn't exist prior. So if the Uchiha are able to tap into the power of creation of all things, why wouldn't they be able to add things onto their body that weren't there prior? But to take that one step further, if you're able to heal yourself from, let's say, a Susanoo arrow, why wouldn't you be able to make a new body for yourself with healthy lungs? If, hypothetically, let's say somebody hit you with a great fireball technique, and while you were trying to avoid this great fireball technique, you accidentally inhaled a ton of fire and scorched the inside of your lungs. If you used Izanagi in that circumstance, you would simply create yourself somewhere else with new lungs. And considering the fact that it's pretty much universally agreed upon that Itachi had some kind of pulmonary disease, lung disease, why wouldn't he, if he was so concerned about staying alive for Sasuke, use Izanagi to give himself a fresh new body? Now sure, he only would have had one Sharingan, but he was also openly working in a group called the Akatsuki, which was led by Obito, who had every Sharingan. Itachi could have popped out one of his eyes, put in one random eye, and used Izanagi with that eye, and then taken that eye out. The only real explanation to this plot hole would be that Itachi didn't understand what was making him sick, and therefore didn't know how to cure himself from it using Izanagi. But Itachi had to have at least a cursory understanding of what made him sick, because he knew how to extend his life with his illness. So overall, plot hole wise, I give this one a 5.5 out of 10. Not the worst, but not the best. Up next after that, we have, why did Kurama ever help Naruto? Harken back to the early days of Naruto, when Kurama was a demon fox entity living inside Naruto that was vehemently trying to scratch away at the walls to get out of Naruto. There were no fist bumps, there was no best friends, there was no Baryon mode. Kurama was evil incarnate and living inside of Naruto. And yet, at certain points throughout Naruto's early journey, Kurama would help Naruto. See, obviously we understand that Naruto has the 8-trigram seal on his stomach that allows him to constantly access Kurama's chakra. It was made that way specifically by Minato. And the biggest danger with the seal is that Kurama would constantly leak chakra to Naruto and eventually try and take over his body. And if Kurama was able to get enough tails out, he would take over Naruto's body and kill him in the process and be re-released. However, there was a much shorter path for that for Kurama. See, we understand that if a Jinchuriki dies, that the tailed beast will simply reform somewhere else. This is what happened with Isobu, the 3 tails, after Yagura died. So why, in circumstances like when Naruto was falling down that spiky little valley, would Kurama help him summon somebody like Gamabunta? Because if, let's say, hypothetically, Naruto were simply to splat at the bottom of that valley, Kurama would be released. And while it would take a second for Kurama's chakra to reform somewhere else, Kurama would have exactly what he wanted. And this isn't the only circumstance. There are plenty of times before Naruto and Kurama become buddies that Kurama helps Naruto. However, if Kurama hadn't helped Naruto, he would have been free and could have rampaged all he wanted. Now, this one is a little bit worse than the Izanagi one. However, it too does also kind of have an explanation. And the explanation comes from the 8-trigram seal. See, Naruto wasn't always asking Kurama for help. He was simply accessing the chakra he could from the 8-trigram seal. However, there was definitely times before Naruto and Kurama were friends that Kurama did actively give his chakra to Naruto. So I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. Worse than the first one, but does have a slight explanation. But having a slight explanation isn't always the best thing. See, I'd rather have no explanation than an annoying explanation. And this third plot hole definitely falls into the annoying explanation category. See, this plot hole pops up in the 4th grade Shinobi World War. And the plot hole is, why could Madara use Kamui as the 10 tails Jinchuriki when Obito couldn't. See, this plot hole has an explanation, and the explanation is it's Madara. I guess technically the better explanation is that Madara was a better Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails than Obito was. But loosely, the explanation is it's Madara. And while it is technically a valid explanation, it doesn't really tell us anything. Because the core of the issue here is the fact that Obito has spent his entire life using kamui. And not only has Obito spent his entire life using kamui, he uses it more than any other MS user has ever used their MS. Now, obviously, this is because Obito has half of Hashirama cells that allow him to rejuvenate the damage done to his eye. But you're telling me, in the 30 seconds that Madara had a kamui eye, he was able to master kamui at a level that Obito couldn't. Relationship with the Ten Tails be damned. Even if Madara is a better Ten Tails Jinchuriki than Obito, Obito should be a better kamui user than Madara, and these things should level out. Now, the official explanation is that Obito couldn't warp his body because of the massive amount of chakra in him. But once again, Madara being able to do that when Obito couldn't is aggravating. Though this one does have a slight explanation in the fact that we know Madara has way more chakra than Obito. As Obito stated, he would only be able to wield one of the Rinnegan, while Madara obviously could wield two, if not three. So if you take that plot hole by itself, it's probably like a 3.5, 4 out of 10. By the way, 10 out of 10 is annoying, 1 out of 10 is fine. However, there's more problems with this scene than just the fact that Madara can use an ability that Obito has had his entire life. Because the fourth plot hole we're going to talk about is, how could Madara enter the kamui dimension with Kakashi's eye? Ignoring the simple absurdity of just ripping out Kakashi's eye and placing it in his own face, Kakashi wields the long-range kamui that allows him to kamui things outside of his body into the kamui dimension. This is why he was able to send the nail that Nagato sent at him into the kamui dimension. He was able to rip off Deidara's arm. Kakashi has never been able to kamui himself into the kamui dimension. That's because that's the ability of Obito's eye, which is why Obito can't be hit, really, because he can kamui parts of himself into the kamui dimension, or his entire self into the kamui dimension. So how did Madara, using the long-distance kamui eye, kamui himself into the kamui dimension? Does it make sense? Not only is he using a kamui ability that Obito couldn't use, he's now using a kamui ability that Kakashi couldn't use. And once again, the explanation is just, it's Madara, which is infuriating. When you take both of these plot holes and put them together, it becomes like a 7 or 8 out of 10 on the annoyance scale. But honestly, a lot of that 8 is wrapped up in the fact that he shouldn't be able to enter the kamui dimension at all. So as a standalone, I'm probably gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. Speaking of Madara in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, another one of the upgrades that he got going into this war was having Hashirama's cells that allowed Madara to become a perfect sage all but immediately. And while I, in practice, have technically no issues with this, I do, however, have issue with the way that the Shinobi Alliance decided to deal with Madara, who is now a perfect sage, or deal with any enemy sage for that matter. See, we learned when Naruto was training in Mount Mubuko with the Toads to master Toad Sage mode that Fukakusu, aka Pa, had a stick that when he hits you with it, all of the nature energy in your body would be expelled. Now, the reason that Fukakusu has this stick is because if you pull in too much nature energy as a Toad Sage, you turn into a stone, which is why you can't drain chakra from a Toad Sage, because you'll turn into a stone. Why didn't we use that stick more often? Listen, I understand that Mom and Pa basically retired from the story after Jiraiya's death, but you know who didn't retire from the story? Gamabunta, Gamakichi, basically all other Toads. You know who definitely didn't retire from the story? Naruto. You throw that stick in the hands of Naruto when he's battling against Madara and he's just constantly beating the nature energy out of Madara? That is a massive advantage. Now, I guess he would probably have to wear like a glove, so he technically wasn't holding the stick because it would expel all of his nature energy. But if there's an item out there that's basically able to defeat all Sage Mode users by hitting them with it, why wouldn't we try to employ that weapon against one of the most powerful sages on Earth? The only reason that Madara with no eyes was able to defeat Sasuke is because he was using Sage Mode to anticipate what Sasuke's moves were, which means one bonk with a stick and Madara never even gets to become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Now, there is the possible explanation that this only expels Toad Sage nature energy, but that's never explicitly stated. Now, obviously, we know that the ointments that they use in Mount Mubuko to help you pull in nature energy can only be used on Mount Mubuko, but that's only ever said about the ointments, not the stick. So as to why it never showed up on the battlefield, your guess is as good as mine. Would it have been a little silly to watch Naruto try and hit Madara with a stick? Probably. But would it build off existing lore about Sage Mode weaknesses? Absolutely. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. Sticking with bad guys in our 6th plot hole, why didn't Danzo try to take over Konoha earlier? Let's see, when it comes to bad guys in Naruto, Madara and Danzo are probably the two evilest ones. However, they both believe that what they're doing is correct. And while Madara was trying to bring peace to the entire world, Danzo was trying to rule Konoha in the way he thought was best. And we know after Tsunade goes into a coma in her battle against Nagato, that Danzo decides it's now my time to rule the village. And he uses Kodo Matsukame on the leader of the Land of Iron Samurai to convince the other four Kage that he should be the Hokage, revealing to us that Danzo has been plotting to take over the Hokage ship for a long time, even proceeding to run the route after Hiruzen officially shut them down. But why would Danzo wait until Tsunade went into a coma? See, Tsunade could always wake up and then make a legitimate claim to continue being the 5th Hokage. Why wouldn't Danzo, if he truly wanted to take over the village, enact this plan to take over the Hokage ship after Hiruzen's death? As Hiruzen's key advisor, his best friend and leader of the route, he had a pretty good claim at becoming the 5th Hokage. So why wouldn't he try to take over Konoha then? Why wait? Konoha was substantially weaker after Hiruzen's death than they were after Tsunade's coma. Jiraiya didn't want the job, Tsunade was nowhere to be found, Orochimaru was excommunicado, Kakashi hadn't accomplished enough, Naruto was a child, and Danzo at that point still probably had Kodo Matsukame. In fact, he most definitely did. The only way to rally against this plot hole is the Hyuga theory, as the Hyugas are the most powerful clan within Konoha, and every single one of them wields the Byakugan. And just one guy with one Byakugan who wasn't even from the Hyuga clan, Ao from the Hidden Mist, was able to figure out Danzo's plan and foil it when he tried to use Kodo Matsukame on the Land of Iron's head samurai, Mifune. So if Danzo tried to use Kodo Matsukame on the important members of Konoha in order to elect him Hokage, it's a possibility that the Hyugas would have seen it, and therefore foiled his plan. However, Danzo was in a position of power and could have probably just claimed the 5th Hokage seat legitimately. So as to why he didn't make a legitimate push to become the 5th Hokage, I don't think we'll ever know. Like, yeah, he's got a bad track record, but the people he has a bad track record with are all dead, and the victor writes the history books. But because I think the Hyuga theory has a large amount of validity, I'm only gonna give this one a 2.5 out of 10. You know what I'm not gonna give a 2.5 out of 10 though? Our next plot hole. We're going back to Madara, who apparently is a walking plot hole, because our 7th plot hole is Madara's plan was stupid. Well, more specifically, Madara's plan to use Rinne Rebirth was stupid. See, Madara's plan for kicking off the Eye of the Moon plan was unplugging himself from the Ghetto Mazo and dying, and then trusting that the 2-year-old boy he shoved his Rinnegan into would one day give his life to bring Madara back to life. And while that requires an insane amount of trust and is probably one of the worst laid plans in anime history, the end goal of that plan is also asinine. Because let me remind you of how Rinne Rebirth works. It doesn't bring you back in your prime body. It takes your soul and it shoots it back into your body. Nobody in Konoha, when Nagato brought them all back using Rinne Rebirth, was brought back in their prime. They were brought back as they died. And Madara died as an old, decrepit man who needed to be plugged into the Ghetto Mazo to stay alive. Which means if Rinne Rebirth works in the way that we've seen it work, that Madara would have just been brought back as an old, decrepit man who would then need to replug himself into the Ghetto Mazo, which is essentially the same thing as if he just never unplugged himself. Now, the only way to make this plan make any sense is if you say that Nagato used Rinne Rebirth on the entirety of Konoha, so he couldn't focus on all of them. However, if Nagato only used Rinne Rebirth on one person, that one person being Madara, that he would be brought back in the prime of his life. Why would that be the circumstance? We don't know, because that's a completely made up explanation. There's no reason for us to believe that Nagato put less into his Rinne Rebirth for Konoha than he would have for Madara. Yes, he does say, I'll only be able to bring back those who died here, implying that there's some kind of chakra limit associated to his Rinne Rebirth. There's also no concrete evidence that shows that he's able to Rinne Rebirth somebody harder than he did to the people in Konoha. And because of that, on the annoyance scale, that one gets an 8, maybe an 8.5. But it gets worse, because coming in at number 8, we have the sheer amount of trust that Madara put into a child. And not just one child, two. See, Madara spent about a year with Obito before he unplugged himself from the Ghetto Mazo, and in that 1 year, he deduced that Obito would be able to sway the child who he implanted his Rinnegan into to join the Eye of the Moon plan. Because that was Madara's plan. Give the Rinnegan to a child, hope that child survives the implant and, oh, I don't know, the ninja world, and then have another child who I've known for a year, build a criminal empire, find the child that Madara put his Rinnegan into, convince that child to join the criminal empire, convince that child to give his life for Madara, and all the while hope that the child that you've known for a year and didn't treat all that great likes you enough to actually bring you back. Which, mind you, was not Obito's plan. Obito was surprised when Madara got back. Without Kabuto, it wouldn't have happened. That's why Obito tried to become the Ten-Tailed Jinchuriki himself. Madara was accounting on 2 children bringing him back to life before he unplugged himself from his life support. So when you take 7 and 8 and put them together, it's a 10 out of 10. Mind-numbingly stupid. And the worst part is there's really no explanation for any of it. Yes, obviously things worked out for Madara in the end, but they shouldn't have, even if things went to plan. So many things had to go correct for Madara's plan to work in the first place that it was almost impossible to achieve, and what he was trying to achieve might not have even worked in the first place. But speaking of mind-numbingly stupid, let's go to our number 9 spot. Because coming in at number 9, we have the fact that Naruto failed the graduation exam 3 separate times. However, he is the same age, if not younger, than most of the Konoha 13. So how did this happen? How did Naruto get to spend 3 years in the Shinobi Academy and fail the graduation exam 3 separate times, yet be the same age as everybody else? Shouldn't he be like Iwabe and Boruto, significantly older than the rest of the Konoha 13? Now, while this one's technically never been explained, nobody's ever sat us down and explained how Naruto was able to spend 3 years in the Shinobi Academy while maintaining to be the same age as everybody else in the Konoha 13. There is kind of an answer that at least the fan base has accepted, and that is, since Naruto was an orphan who wasn't in the orphanage and was being loosely raised by Anbu members, they sent him to the Shinobi Academy at a younger age. This being because he had no one to raise him, and therefore him being in school would at least teach him some social skill. And the teachers and his fellow students would be able to keep an eye on Naruto. Now, this isn't unheard of. I mean, Kakashi claims to have completed the Chunin exam at the age of 6, though that is incredibly inconsistent with basically all other plot points revolving around Kakashi's childhood. And we know that Minato graduated from the Shinobi Academy at 10, and therefore there really is no hard set age in which you join the Shinobi Academy. If you're talented, or in possibly a really weird situation like Naruto, there is a possibility you go to the Shinobi Academy early, and therefore Naruto was able to spend 3 years in the Shinobi Academy, failing the graduation exam before he finally got hooked up with the Konoha 13. So far as plot holes go, that one's pretty thin. I give it a 1.5. It's probably the one that annoys me the least on this list, and it's a great example of we don't have the answer, but we can use information and knowledge about the universe to deduce probably what happened, which are actually kind of my favorite kinds of plot holes. Ones that we can use logic to figure out, which I find substantially better than ones that we get shoddy answers to from the anime or manga. You know what we never got a good answer for, however, and this one also pertains to Naruto's childhood. How did nobody ever figure out who he was? See, the thing about Naruto's childhood is that he wasn't given the last name Namikaze because nobody wanted him or the rest of the village to know that he was related to the 4th Hokage. Why the village wanted him or anybody else to not know that he was a Namikaze, we never really get an explanation. While you could throw out the explanation that,
Oh, if everybody knows he's the son of the 4th Hokage, he's a high-value kidnapping liability, and we have to keep a bunch of people watching him constantly.
it was public knowledge that he was the Jinchuriki of Kurama. Danzo leaked that when he was a baby. There is nothing that makes you a higher value target than being the Jinchuriki of the most powerful tailed beast. In fact, the village in Naruto knowing that he was the son of the 4th Hokage would do nothing but improve Naruto's life. I will bet you my entire YouTube page that if Konoha knew that Naruto was Minato's son, they would have treated him a lot better. Oh, you're the son of the legendary war hero who battled against Kurama in order to save the village? Yeah, we'll treat you all right. In fact, if people knew Naruto was the son of Minato, they probably would have been able to deduce the fact that Minato was the one who put Kurama in him. And they probably would have respected Minato's decision and treated his son, a walking bomb, a little bit better. But even if you want to ignore that, how did nobody ever come to the conclusion that Naruto was Minato's son? Sure, you changed his name from Namikaze to Uzumaki, but there was one, and I mean one Uzumaki in Konoha, who was very famously married to the one Namikaze in Konoha. And that one Uzumaki was very famously pregnant, as she is the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, had everybody very concerned that when she had her child, the Nine Tails would be released. So nobody was like,
Uzumaki baby, Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, wonder how this happened.
I wonder where this Uzumaki child's parents went. It's a shame about Minato and Kushina dying, by the way. I mean, the level of cognitive dissonance that one needs to not make this conclusion is insane. It's a 10 out of 10. It will never not irk me. There's no explanation to it whatsoever. There's not even theories. It's not like anybody was running interference. If you wanted nobody to recognize Naruto, give him the last name Akamichi, Aburame, something random. Hell, make him a Hatake. Who cares? If we're going the stealth route here, don't choose one of the parents' names, choose a random name. But speaking of stupid things that happen at a high level in Konoha, coming in at number 11, we have why didn't Itachi kill Danzo? So we all know that Itachi and Shisui operated as spies for Konoha on the Uchiha. They would watch over the Uchiha clan and report all of their movings to the higher-ups of Konoha. Well, more importantly, they would report to Danzo, who wouldn't report to Hiruzen. However, when Itachi and Shisui decided one day that they would stop the Uchiha coup by using Shisui's Kodoa Matsukame on Fugaku, Danzo decided not a great idea, and decided to kill Shisui. Specifically, he had his right-hand man, Yoji Aburame, poison and paralyze Shisui, and then he yoinked out his eye. However, Shisui was able to break away from Danzo and get back to Itachi, at which point he reported to Itachi that Danzo had killed him. Like, not actually, obviously he was still talking, but he needed Itachi to cut him down so Itachi could awaken his MS. Now, at this point, Itachi still has a Kodoa Matsukame because he gets Shisui's other Kodoa Matsukame. And a lot of people speculate that Itachi actually got the stronger of the two Kodoa Matsukame because there's a theory out there held by a lot of people, Swag Kage, myself, that Shisui's two Kodoa Matsukame actually worked differently, with the one that Danzo ended up with being the weaker yet shorter cooldown time eye, which you can be broken out of, and the one that Itachi ended up with being the stronger yet much longer cooldown eye that you can't be broken out of. And therefore, there was still very much a possibility that Itachi could have enacted Shisui's plan. There's also very much the possibility that Itachi could have gotten revenge for Shisui, which he kind of does in the light novel. Itachi goes so far as to kill Yoji Aburame, who's technically sent to kill him by Danzo. But if hypothetically Itachi had killed Danzo, it's not like it would have started the coup or a war between the Uchiha and Konoha. In fact, killing Danzo probably would have caused the Uchiha and Konoha to come to terms, to try and figure things out bureaucratically, because that's what Hiruzen wanted. And the reason the Uchiha coup happened is, well, one, the Uchiha planning the coup, but two, because Danzo was making sure that Hiruzen didn't get any of the information regarding the Uchiha coup. What's worse than Itachi not killing Danzo is that he proceeds to work with Danzo for like a full year after killing Shisui. He's just like,
Oh, well, that was my best friend. What did you need, boss?
but he was a 13-year-old at the time, and he was actively trying to make sure that Konoha and the Uchiha didn't enter a war, so I can't super hold this against him. If anything, he was kind of a prisoner of the situation. But it does still annoy me because there is technically a lot of better things Itachi could have done. So overall, I give this one a 7 out of 10. Speaking of losing eyeballs, coming in at number 12, we have what happened to Naruto's healing? See, in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, after Naruto is bestowed his powers by Hagoromo, Ninja Sky Daddy, he undergoes a Yang transformation to his KCM2 that gives him a bunch of new cool abilities. He has True Seeker Orbs, he's substantially more orange, and apparently he has the ability to heal people. We learned this because after Kakashi had his eyeball yoinked out by Madara, Naruto came over, gave him a new eye, just completely remade an eyeball, something that only Shizune has the ability to do, not even Tsunade. And Naruto's like, well, I can only perform simple healing measures. Not a simple healing measure at all. Arguably, one of the most complicated things you can do in medical ninjutsu. And that is the first and the last time that Naruto ever uses that ability. Now, there's an argument here that Naruto no longer has his Sage of Six Paths Chakra, but that's wrong. He does still have it. We've seen him use it in Boruto. His Sage of Six Paths Chakra wasn't just a one-time use battery, it was rechargeable. He's able to tap into it to increase his own power. We know this because aesthetically he undergoes the same changes in Boruto as he did in the 4th Great Shinobi World War after getting this new upgrade. What he no longer has, though, however, is things like True Seeker Orbs, as they're a Kekemora, and he's not an Otsutsuki, and he's not related to Kaguya. However, he can control Kekemora as he has control of all 7 nature releases. But once a Kekemora that's under his control is destroyed, like every single one of his Kekemora was, he can't create any more. So Naruto no longer has True Seeker Orbs. However, Naruto also no longer has his Sun Seal, as the arm that had the Sun Seal was blown off. And the same thing happened to Sasuke's Moon Seal. And this is most likely where Naruto's healing prowess comes from. So if hypothetically Naruto and Sasuke didn't lose their Sun and Moon Seal at the end of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, they would probably still be able to do all things sun and moon, like 6 past Chibaku Tensei, or healing eyeballs. But since they no longer have them, they no longer have these abilities, which is why this plot hole gets a 1 out of 10. It has a somewhat logical explanation, even though it's never been told to us. But speaking of taking things from Naruto, coming up at number 13, we have, why did Obito never go back for Naruto? Here's the thing. Obito pulls up on the night of Naruto's birth because he understands that the seal on Kurama will be at its weakest. And Obito, for some reason, probably because he didn't understand the Geto Mazo yet, wanted to get Kurama first, though he wouldn't have been able to seal Kurama until he got all of the other tailed beasts. But the problem with attacking Kushina on the night of her birth is that Minato was still very much alive, and Obito proceeded to get beat like some meat on December 1st. But then the only people in the village with any semblance of power and a connection to Naruto being Hiruzen wasn't exactly keeping a close eye on Naruto. And I know what you're gonna say, the reason that Obito never circled back is because of Jiraiya. But let's not sit here and act like Jiraiya was keeping a close eye on Naruto either. Naruto was abandoned for like 11 years. Sure, there was some Anbu members keeping an eye on him to make sure he was still breathing, but I watched Anbu members jump into a force field when Orochimaru and Hiruzen were battling and get lit on fire. A very visible force field, mind you. And Obito went toe-to-toe with Minato, so Anbu members really aren't getting in the way much. Sure, maybe after Naruto was stolen, Jiraiya would go and look for him, but it's too late. Literally, all Obito had to do was get hands on Naruto, kamui himself into the kamui dimension, and then pop out somewhere else. And I know what you're saying, well,
even if he went back for him, he wouldn't be able to seal him.
So? He could just hold on to him. Naruto was a child. Wait until you get all the other Jinchuriki, extract the tailed beast from Naruto, and then you're good. Don't wait until he grows up to be the strongest dude on the planet. Sure, Jiraiya's watching over him as he's a 3-day journey away, and it's not like Obito didn't know where the Nine Tails was. For that matter, why did Obito even start the 4th Great Shinobi World War in the first place? If he knew he could just use Kinkaku and Ginkaku in part of Gyuki to recreate the 10 Tails, why even go looking for Killer Bee in Naruto? Why not just make the 10 Tails in your little secret lair and then cast Infinite Tsukiyomi?
Oh, it makes a weaker version of the 10 Tails.
So what? He didn't know what a 10 Tails was. All he knew is if he got all of the 9-tailed beasts into the Geto Mazo, he would enact Infinite Tsukiyomi. That was all he was going for. So all they had to do was bring back Kinkaku and Ginkaku and throw part of Gyuki into the Geto Mazo, and we're all happy. For that matter, why announce the war to all the villages? You could have launched an individual war against the cloud or the leaf. Why bring the mist, sand, and stone into it? And the samurai. All of it, 10 out of 10, complete and utter headache. And there's barely an explanation for any of it. You could say that Obito didn't know he could use Ginkaku and Gyuki, but when did he figure that out in the 4th Great Shinobi World War? You could say that Obito announced the war to get Killer Bee and Naruto out of their villages, but you have the Akatsuki, you have an army of Edo Tensei's soldiers. Announcing the war just made Naruto realize he had to train to get stronger with Kurama, and all of this could have been avoided if you just went and nabbed him when he was 2. But enough about that, Uchiha. Let's talk about Sasuke, because coming in at number 14, we have all of the times that Sasuke survived. Just kidding. We're not gonna go on a whole Sasuke diatribe. It's only the one time he survived. I mean, sure, he got his windpipe crushed by Killer Bee, and that got fixed. And then sure, he got stabbed a bunch, and that got fixed. And sure, he was technically within Inoki's activated particle release, but he got out of it because Obito warped him out. And sure, he had to get saved by Kabuto after he got defeated by Madara with no eyes. And sure, Naruto took pity on him in the Valley of the End fight and purposely made it a draw. But I don't want to talk about any of those. No, I want to talk about the time he survived an explosion, specifically Deidara's C0. See, the Sasuke versus Deidara fight is one of the better fights in Naruto, and it definitely displays Sasuke's battle IQ. Like when Sasuke accidentally inhales Deidara's C4 and has to run electricity through his body to nullify the explosion. But at the end of the battle, Sasuke is seemingly out of chakra, at least so far as Deidara assumes, and therefore Deidara decides to use his suicide attack C0, which will destroy them both, creating one of the most violent and powerful attacks in all of Naruto, something that decimates the entire forest that they were battling in, and something that Sasuke is unable to escape. And therefore Sasuke, who's supposed to be out of chakra, summons Manda, and then puts Manda under Genjutsu, so Manda protects him. Well, so while Sasuke is running on E, he's able to pull off the summoning jutsu, one of the most chakra depletive jutsus in the show, and then place a summoning animal, specifically a very strong summoning animal, under Genjutsu, which for those of you who don't understand Genjutsu is an incredibly chakra depletive task. Sasuke in that moment would have had to control all 5 of Manda's senses and forced him into protecting Sasuke, which wouldn't have been an easy task when you consider the fact that Manda hated Sasuke. So while supposedly running on E, Sasuke pulled off one of the most chakra depletive and chakra control heavy moves that anybody in Naruto has ever pulled off, all in order to save himself. And mind you, the summoning animal he summoned didn't get exploded by the explosion. While Madara was killed by the explosion, he was just lightly charred, keeping Sasuke completely fine, while everything else in the surrounding was molecularly deleted. And while for a long time this scene made me very angry, I've recently found God, Hashirama, and I've decided that, you know what? It was Deidara that made the assumption that Sasuke was out of chakra. He never says that. And sure, Deidara is a high-level shinobi who's able to ascertain how much chakra somebody has. And sure, Deidara has battled against Uchihas like Itachi in the past. And sure, the explosion probably should have eviscerated Manda's body. And sure, making the assumption that Deidara somehow wasn't able to ascertain how much chakra Sasuke had basically flies in the face of any rating of his battle IQ ever. But yes, it wasn't Sasuke who said it. It was Deidara. And therefore, this one doesn't make me angry at all. We're gonna give it a 2 out of 10. To our last and final plot hole, one that'll probably make you guys mad. Jiraiya could have been reincarnated. See, when Kabuto was building an army of Edo Tensei soldiers, he says that the only 2 people he was unable to find were Shisui and Jiraiya, as Shisui's body was unrecoverable and Jiraiya's body sunk to the bottom of an ocean, and Kabuto had no ability to get to the bottom of said ocean to recover his body. Therefore, there was no way that we could ever find genetic material from Jiraiya in order to bring him back, except for the fact that, of course, it's acknowledged in the manga that Jiraiya's blood should still be on Pain's chakra rods, and Jiraiya's blood was all over the hidden rain. His arm, after it was blown off, probably didn't sink to the bottom of the ocean, and that there was clearly enough genetic material for Amado to clone him like 13 years later. Tie that into the fact that the bottom of the ocean really shouldn't be that much of a hassle for a ninja, as Conan was quite literally able to split that ocean with paper bombs, and there's people out there who use water ninjutsu and could definitely swim to the bottom of an ocean, one of them being a member of the Akatsuki. And we have one of the bigger glaring plot holes in Naruto. Now, technically this plot hole does have an explanation, but that explanation comes from outside of the universe. See, Kishimoto was questioned as to why he didn't bring Jiraiya back, and Kishimoto stated that he didn't want to bring Jiraiya back because of the emotions and character development and all the things that Naruto would have had to go through upon seeing his teacher reincarnate. And Naruto was already dealing with too much in the 4th Great Shinobi World War to deal with seeing Jiraiya being used as a puppet. So that's it. Lazy writing, an unwillingness to give Naruto the closure that Team 10 got with Asuma. Yes, that's right, Team 10 got better treatment than the main character of the show. Because who would want to see Naruto and Jiraiya have a couple of final moments as they battled against each other and Jiraiya reveled at how strong Naruto had gotten, how much he was similar to Minato. Naruto was too busy with Minato. He doesn't deserve closure with Jiraiya, he already got it with his real dad. That's a great reason. Infallible. It's a 10 out of 10. It's absolutely tilting, unless of course we get Kashin Koji to finally meet Naruto and Naruto gets closure through Kashin Koji. Then it'll be a 1 out of 10 and everything will be fine. But if it doesn't happen, it will remain a 10 out of 10. And that's it. All 15 plot holes in Naruto that we're gonna cover in today's video. There is more plot holes in Naruto, it's just this video is already kind of long. But let me know, guys, if you want me to do a Naruto plot holes part 2. And if there's any plot holes I didn't cover in Naruto that drive you up a wall, tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Like, let's just imagine for a second that Obito didn't have the world's biggest ego and just collected all of the Jinchuriki. He was doing great. None of the villages were mobilizing, and then he just decided, let's just use that part of Gyuki and Kinkaku and Ginkaku, and let's just see what happens. And then one day, everybody looks up, and the moon is red, and that's it. There didn't need to be a 4th Great Shinobi World War. Everybody made the wrong choice.